Well, what's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. Thank you so much for joining me. I do appreciate you, all of you. I have something very, very interesting and very cool on the table today. Recently, I have gotten very much into the company Terrain365. I picked up the Invictus, which I very much enjoy. And then following up on that, I picked up the STS-AT, which I also very much enjoy. And I started looking around at other knives that they have made, and I found online a reference to the P38, which is the little guy right here. They're sold out everywhere. I didn't think I was going to get my hands on one, and then a buddy of mine who does knife sale and trades ended up with one. And so I traded for the Terrain365 P38. And it is, I know, it's a small knife for me. I mean, what are we coming in at? What is this, 6? Yeah, just about 6.5 inches. I mean, we're talking, 2.5 inches of cutting. Right? I mean, this is a small knife for me, but there are some features here that really, really interest me. First and foremost, you're going to notice this little button right here. Well, what is that about? Well, this is a liner lock auto, right? But it's called a double action, and it is. And let's talk about that before we go any further. So it's a liner lock, as I said, right? And you can feel the spring kick in right about here, right? Snaps open very well. But you can also thumb stud it open. And when you do that, it becomes just a thumb stud flipper until you compress it. And now it's back to being an auto. I've never had a dual action knife like this before, and I think it is very, very cool. Now, it's a little chunky, but I think that's probably because of the workings of the dual action feature. This knife feels for all the world like a custom. It really does. It's all titanium. It's got beautiful carbon fiber. It's got a little schmutz on it because I was lubricating it the other day. It's got glow down inside the button. It's got really nice thumb studs, and it is their Terravantium steel, which is dendritic cobalt, which is non-magnetic and non-reactive metal. Much like, I'll just grab the STS here, which stands for C to Summit. This is an all-weather knife, but just very, very interesting in design. Stuff like this just appeals to me. It really does. I love the fact that you can just use this thing any way you want, right? Don't want an auto? Don't use it like an auto, right? It sounds good on the close too, doesn't it? Right? It's just again, it's just so interesting. And when I first got it and I did the thumb flick and then the button didn't work, I thought, oh my God, I've broken it. Until I realized that, again, it's just this little lock. That's it. And we're back to auto. That's cool. Now the blade is satin, right, with satin grind lines, and then stonewash on the secondary bevel. It does share, the end of the blade shape is very similar, right up there at the tip. As you can see, it's very similar to the Invictus in the way that they've done this bevel here and the sort of nice belly at the tip. But beyond that, obviously, it is a much different knife. Now, recently, again, I talk about this a lot, my work has been such that I've been sort of reinvesting in smaller knives. You know, stuff like the Delica and the Bug Out. I've been getting a lot more pocket time because I need to carry stuff that is a little subtler. The P38 here is small enough, but because of how thick it is through the handle, it does eat up a lot of pocket. So it's not really in the same vein as these other two knives. But it is excellent to carry and use. Now, there is a little bit of a downside, which we will get into right now. These knives, if you can find one new, are $495. that is very, very expensive. But Terrain365 does not sell inexpensive knives. The Invictus is $395. This is $100 more than that for a lot less knife, except the build on this is exquisite. It really is. Now, this one's not perfect. This one's got a little bit of gapping right here, as you can see. I don't know if that's indicative of the style or just this particular one. Again, I got this one used, so I don't know where it was and how it was used before I got it. But the dual action feature alone is just cool enough that I don't care. Now, again, I didn't spend $495 on this knife. I traded for it, as I do. I had an out the front from Heretic Knives. I had the Heretic Manticore X. And while I really like that, it's probably my favorite out the front, I don't really carry out the front autos. It was nice to have one in the collection, but in the end, I added that with some other stuff and swapped it for this. And I'm very happy with the trade, mostly because I don't carry a lot of autos, but because this one is so much more interesting. Very expensive, but interesting. And I just think it's pretty. What a great looking little knife. I love that 90% of the time it gets to be just a thumb stud flipper. Until you do this, again, give it a little click, and now you're back to auto deploy. I just think that is rad. All right, so let's get the rest of the specs out of the way. As I said, you're looking at a 2.5-inch cutting on 2 3/4 inches of Terravantium, which is dendritic cobalt, as I mentioned. The grip area from behind that swell is 3 1/4, which means it's a little, as you can see, my finger falls off the end. But because it is a full 1/2 inch thick, or even a little thicker this way, you still get a really good grip. Like when I'm holding on to this thing, it doesn't feel like it's trying to get away from me at all, which is very nicely done. The pocket clip is milled titanium, and while it is not disappear deep carry, it is deep carry enough. It's got good spring, good ramp, slips in and out of the pocket very, very comfortably. It's a neat knife. I love stuff like this, stuff that pushes the boundaries a little bit. Now, I've already done some of the size comparisons, but we're going to do it again just for giggles. Here it is against its cousin, the Invictus. As you can see, the Invictus is just a much, much larger knife. Here it is against the Terminus XR LTE, the light version from the Studies and Observations group. They don't call themselves SOG anymore. They made some updates on this. I'm going to do a full review of this shortly. And one of the updates, of course, is that it's got a much nicer clip than the old Terminus. What do I have that's similar in size out on the table? Nothing, but hang on a sec. And okay, so I went and grabbed something. Well, this is not actually the same size. This is very reminiscent of the Calmigo's a little smaller. Right, but the same kind of chunky handle, short blade, small knife. Here it is against the little Kershaw, the Launch 4. Right. It's just not a big knife. Let's do it up against the Bug Out, a knife many of you have seen or at least held. And you can see the Bug Out is just a full-size knife compared to the P38 here. Of course, it's much, much thinner. Right? The P38 is a chunky boy. I wish I could recommend this knife to everyone. Like, go out and grab one. But at the price, and considering that they're kind of hard to find, I can't really do that. This is more of a collection piece for me. But I would love it if companies would start doing stuff like this. I think if Riot, for instance, wanted to make themselves a dual action auto, they'd do equally as good a job. I love the refined build. I love the shape of the blade. And again, and I really got to stop saying again. And also, the fact that you can open and close this thing in a couple of really different and interesting ways makes me super happy. It's just a great knife. And it better be, you know, for nearly $500. I mean, at that price range, you are absolutely competing with, you know, stuff like this, you know, or I don't even think I have anything on the table. It's even, you know, I mean, this is $3 and some change. The folks at Terrain365 went out on a limb to make this knife, and they had to charge what they had to charge. I'm not going to argue with that, but they really did put themselves up into some rarefied air with this one. I think it's worth it because I think it's interesting. I'm not telling you you have to, but I do. The Terrain365 P38 is completely unique in my collection, and I think would be unique in almost anyone's collection, because of how it is made and the thought and design ideals behind it. That kind of uniqueness is important, particularly for a collector, because you can have an endless number of thumb stud flippers in high-end steel and titanium and carbon fiber. It just goes on forever. But every once in a while, something comes along that is unique. And this is one of those. Now, I know this isn't the only dual action out there. I don't have any others, but I know there are others. I'm just telling you that, for me at least, this is the only one in my collection, and it holds kind of a special place because of its uniqueness. It is a very nice flipper. I would very much love it if they would release this as just a thumb stud flipper, maybe in simpler materials for a little less money, because I think they would sell a ton of them, because knives this size, you know, are popular. People like smaller knives. And I think that they could really have a good thing here if they released like a G10 version that was just thumb studs. I think they'd be very, very well done, well sorted. Stuff like this, right? But anyway, this is a new part to my collection. I'm not telling you to run out and get one. Let's see how much it weighs, just because that's something we do here. While we're doing that, I do want to tell you that I had the STS AT sharpened the other day, and the dendritic cobalt, or Terravantium as they call it, is very hard and holds an edge very well. My buddy who did the sharpening for me really liked what he felt, and he has got really good high-end knives. He knows what he's talking about. And so that really gave me a good feeling, because it means that you're not just paying for non-magnetic, non-reactive, rust-proof steel or blade material, but also blade material that holds an edge very, very well and will work for you. And this, I imagine, is no different. So let's see where we weigh out. Yeah, 4 ounces. It's a hefty boy. But again, 4 ounces for 6.5, just under 6.5 inches is a lot. But there's no milling on the liners, and they are thick tie liners, as you can see. Let's go ahead and break out the calipers and see how thick exactly. Yeah, so we're coming in at 14 millimeters, which is just over half an inch. The Terravantium is 135 thousandths, which is 3.4 millimeters. I get like this. I'll get a knife, from a particular brand or maker or designer, and kind of fall in love with the way that they choose to make knives. And I'll chase them for the collection, which is sort of what's happened here. They have other knives as well. Am I going to get those? Probably. I'd love to say the answer is no, but that's not really going to be the case. I know me, and I know what happens when I start going after a brand. So here we are. This is my Terrain365 collection to date. The P38 here is the newest addition. It is a super interesting double action automatic tiny knife that costs a lot of money, which is not great, but the knife itself sure is. Look at the way they did the swedge there at the top. Oh, there we go. Swedge there at the top, right? It is just pokey enough that if you needed to give somebody a little prodding, this would be great for that. And it is a great cutter. I have used this, as I said, for all the things that I cut with. There's more than enough blade here to do your basic daily tasks. It's pokey enough that if you need to poke something, you can. It's small enough that, particularly if you're doing small work, up close on a board, I lay material out and I draw a cut just to see how well it does that. And this thing really sits in the hand well for that. It's just a neat knife. This is the Terrain365 P38 dual action automatic. I have been a Therapeutic Edge. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.